Hi, my name is Josh Pollock. This talk is about the React-powered future of WordPress. This is a little bit about me. WordPress. Left to my own devices, right? I'm a core contributor to WordPress. I built a popular WordPress plugin. If I could, I would just build everything in like Laravel and React or Vue or something like that. Because the developer experience in WordPress, over time, not the best, right? Brief history of WordPress. 15 years ago, two random people forked B2, which is a popular blogging platform at the time, and built a blogging tool with this mission of democratizing publishing. And over time, this CMS has evolved. Meta fields, right? It's now the Meta API, started with post meta, but you can have this arbitrary key value store. So you can have a post, and then you can have price or SEO fields, that kind of stuff. Custom post types over time in 3.5, so you have the same architecture for a post, the same editor for a post could be, say, a product, could be an event, could be a person, could be a book. In 4.6, 4.7, this is a few years ago, WordPress REST API, a full first-class REST API that allows us to have JavaScript-driven clients more often now that the REST API can serve other technologies. WordPress can become the content management system for other systems. And the REST API also acts to paper over a lot of the legacy concerns, gives you a consistent interface and all of the virtues of REST in terms of discoverability, validation of types, that sort of thing. And soon, this block-based editor you may have heard of called Gutenberg. So it's a WordPress plugin now. It's actually a Drupal module now. And it will be included in WordPress 5.0 when that's feasible. So what is this WordPress block that we're talking about? This is the code, and I'll jump through this in a minute, to create a WordPress block. And if you're looking at it and saying, hey, that looks like a change handler being passed to a React component that updates state, you are correct. This is totally written in using React. So Gutenberg is a block-based editor for experience for WordPress, but it's pretty decoupled. You know, it's a JavaScript application with NPM packages that some smart Drupal folks have imported into a Drupal module already. I saw another PHP CMS had done it as well. But it's also a user interface framework. We're going to see a little bit of that today, primarily for WordPress, but you can use it wherever. Key concept. When you go to the documentation design principles, vision, first thing, everything is a block. That's the fundamental assumption here. So this screenshot is taken from wordpress.org/Gutenberg, where you can go and play with Gutenberg right now in the front end, start to get a sense of it. But those three arrows are pointing to three things, and each one of them is a block. We've got a subheading block, a paragraph block, and then this gallery block, which is currently the active one being edited. These are made out of React components. And so I've highlighted here that the block that's open has these two different controls here, sections. The one on the first arrow on the left is this toolbar, and on the right is the extra controls. And so there are React components that allow you to use these. We're looking at the code there at the top for that one on the left, this toolbar. This block controls toolbar is a slot fill that allow, right, these are both things that you put in your block type and then they render wherever WordPress puts them on the screen using slot and fill. So we're able to, in our own components, do the same thing. Have the block controls, use a toolbar inside of it, and then I've removed all the buttons and stuff, but you can put your own there. Lightning talk, we won't go through all of that. So we can think of posts as now being made out of blocks. And remember, post is a generic term, blog post, page, product. There's opt-in, any custom post type can opt into support for Gutenberg. Blocks tend to be made out of one or more components, if there's any level of complexity. So you can start to think about blocks like you would think of containers in a traditional React Redux application where you have one container that's wrapped in state and then passes props down to smaller components. The block API is documented in the handbook for Gutenberg. If you want to learn more, but I'm going to walk through just that screenshot I showed earlier of code real quick and highlight each of these sections. I'll give you a little bit of a heads up on what's going on there. So we're going to go through each one of these sections individually. The first is the top of the page there, importing dependencies. Right, this is just a standard Webpack import. One thing that I wanted to highlight is that WordPress has a commitment to forward compatibility and backwards compatibility. So WordPress essentially imports React and then exports it as its own API, unmodified. So WordPress element is a package that is identical to React 16.4.1 right now. And that API, whether or not it goes to 16.5 before this is finalized, will be the WordPress React API. That'll be identical, but this will allow for forward compatibility. But we also bring in translation functions, all those PHP translation functions that WordPress has, which are really useful, have imported to JavaScript, and like our block API. And these are, Gutenberg is developed as a mono repo with each of the packages available. They're using Lerna. So you can actually install these in a React app, and I have this in a few places where we're just using the same tooling. But also, I will install as a dev dependency all of the components that I'm using, so that way my just unit tests don't need a WordPress environment to run. They have all these in the dev bundle, and I can test my components in isolation. Block attributes. These are the schema for the fields of the block, what's editable. I'm building a product price pseudocode here, right? Some editor for the price of a product. And this would have an attribute called price. And we'd say that's a number, and it defaults to 0.00. So you can say, it's a string, it's an array, these sorts of things. So you have a little bit of type safety here, both on the server side and in the client. And this is a screenshot where we've looked at what's actually the HTML generated in a contact page. And so we can look at how these attributes are stored. They can be stored in HTML. So you see these comments divide out the blocks. Those are stripped out by the parser, so they don't go to the front end. But for a paragraph block, the content of the paragraph is stored in a p tag, semantic HTML. No need to reinvent the wheel there. Sometimes we do need additional attributes. So an image block uses the image source for the image source. But there are a few attributes at the top there that you see that don't make sense in the DOM. So those are put into the comments. And then this third one here, that's actually one of our blocks. That's a contact form block. That's something that we already had a PHP render function for the shortcode. We were able to port that right over by just having the block choose which form, and then that's available to a server side to feed to the exact same function that we always used. The edit callback, this creates the editor for the block, how it looks in the editor. Going right clockwise here, this is past some props. This gives us our class name. This is dynamically injected, but that's how the WordPress knows what the block is. We also get attributes, the current state of the attributes. We get this isSelected Boolean. So in this example, if the block is selected, I'm showing this editor component. And if it's not, I'm showing just a display. So that way I get a preview in line, true what you see is what you get, and edit in context. It also gets this function called setAttributes. State is owned above the block by WordPress using Redux. And so I just create a change handler using setAttributes. And you can see in this product price editor, I'm passing it one prop called price and one prop called onChangePrice. And that is a very standard change handler. The function's called setAttributes. It works exactly like setState, and that is not a coincidence. It's the same API because it is setState. The save callback optionally saves HTML into the content. So at the top there, I'm using that same product price to print HTML that I might in the front end enhance with JavaScript or CSS, or it's just HTML, depending on my needs. No need to reinvent the wheel if not necessary. Or I could just return null there. That serializes everything. Or if I had set it to go to post meta, if I want to have it into WordPress's key value store, so I can query the database by it, that's available. So those are my two options. That's the basics. It's very well documented. My slides are at this link, but there's also a ton of links there for getting started with this, talks that go into these types of concepts in depth. Render callbacks, so you can do server-side rendering. It has automatic preview in the editing. That's great if you already have shortcodes, you already have PHP in a legacy site that can do this. Plug-in sidebars, if you have settings for a post that aren't visual, they're SEO fields, for example. They can go to plug-in sidebar. WordPress data is a very nice Redux state abstraction that's used for inter-block communication or can be used just in any React app. So that's a good one to look at next. Thank you so much. It means a ton to me that I had this opportunity to speak today. Thank you.
So hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Kaiser. I'm a software developer. I've worked at a few startups and here at Wayfair. I've got, for those who care, I've got a few links in the corner, my GitHub and my website. So I've been around React Redux a while, but you can judge my experience by my lack of stickers on the back of my laptop. Anyway, so I've heard a lot of really cool talks while I've been here yesterday and today, and I've learned a lot, and we're gonna take a break from that, and I'm gonna teach you guys a bunch of things that I assure you are useless, but nonetheless interesting. So we're gonna be talking about Easter eggs in open source projects. So first we're gonna define it. What is an Easter egg? According to Wikipedia, an Easter egg in computer science and media is an intentional inside joke, hidden message, or image in someone's work. And so the name is used to invoke the idea of a traditional Easter egg hunt. So let's get hunting. All right, so if you're a modern web developer of today, like myself, you use Vim for everything. So one time using Vim, I typed in help, which is the way that you open docs in Vim. You put an exclamation point there, and I got an interesting little don't panic message, which sounded familiar to me. So I Googled around, and I found that there's this other command. The other command in the corner is help 42, which pulls up this, what is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. And for those who don't know, these are all quotes from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is a really cool book series, movie series. And I was just like, oh, this is pretty cool. So I wanted to find a little more out, and I went to the Vim repo, cloned the repo, grepped for don't panic, and if this other line as well. And I did a git blame, and found that the writer of it is this guy, Bram Mulinar, who is, he's one of the main maintainers for Vim. And then searching on his website, I found it littered with more stuff about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So just kind of a neat little thing that's found. But if you're a true Unix wizard, you're probably using Emacs, beyond me, but good for you. So there's a bunch of little secrets hidden here, but the coolest one to me is if you're on a Mac specifically, and you go to that file path, you're gonna find a file called cookies, which is a cookie recipe. Yeah. And so this was written by Richard Stallman, who's actually the creator of the Emacs project and does a bunch of other big open source things. And so that folder is actually full of a bunch of weird things. There's like an interview quoted in there and some other oddities. But this is a neat one. And in my searching, I found the most important quote down there, which says, from some forum user who says, I've made this recipe and the cookies are very good. So we know that much. But I was like, okay, why did he do this? Does he just really like cookies? Does he have his own recipe? But I found out that he is an MIT grad, and MIT has this parents' cookbook, which is all the parents of MIT students have put together these recipes and made a PDF and released it to the internet. And Richard Stallman, being a proponent of open source, liked this idea, found a recipe, put it in Emacs. All right. So I'm going to admit that this isn't really a program that I use, Telnet, but it's still a neat thing that's available on all your Unix computers. It's just a text-based protocol for talking between a server and your terminal. And so people have left like all kinds of interesting services that are available for you. And the first one here, it shows if you type in foon into a certain server, you can get an accurate ASCII rendering of the moon state. This is what they gave me, and next to it I put up the current moon state I Googled that day. And then, of course, there's just this one which gives you a bunch of obnoxious errors that you can send to your Slack buddies. But I was like, okay, what's the most obnoxious thing someone's put on Telnet? And I can now see why this is the file that didn't load. But I'll just show it here. Someone put the entirety of Star Wars Episode 4 in ASCII format on that address. So if you have dev down for, I don't know, maybe 2 hours, you can watch Star Wars in your terminal. So, yeah. All right, moving on. So getting a little more modern, Docker, if you've used it as a container environment, it's like it's a really, really great tool for making the same environment usable on different machines. Anyway, when I use Docker occasionally, if you give it a name, you can find it easily. But if you don't give your container a name, Docker generates one. In this corner, you see like Modest Curie, Thirsty Jennings, Gifted Stallman, Richard Stallman. And I was intrigued by this. I was like, okay, what are all these names that sound kind of familiar? And where's this made? So a lot of these Easter eggs I've found by Googling. I'm proud to say this one I actually found on my own. So I went into the Docker project, found this file. And it's got a bunch of usernames, like a bunch of famous names and a bunch of adjectives. And okay, cool, problem solved. They combined those. But at the bottom of the file, there's this one line which says, if Boring and Wozniak have been combined, start again. And that was made by this guy, Michael Crosby. So he cares enough about Wozniak that when your container is made, there's an extra tick that's going to happen if you get that name. And I just find that really cool. A bunch of ASCII art is found all over different websites. Flickr and Reddit like to leave, those are actually like job listings. Like, oh, if someone's looking inside the inspector, maybe they want a tech job. And up here, this one's kind of funny. This is actually, I tested this and took that screenshot myself of that handsome face. And that's on YouTube's live dashboard. So just somewhere deep in the code, there's that face there. So we'll take a quick step back in time to Apollo 11 guidance computer. This is the one that sent the man to the moon first time. And there's Margaret Hamilton, director of the project, standing next to the actual code. But the cool thing is recently it's been digitized by those two groups I've got listed there. And they're not really Easter eggs, but we've got some cool comments left by the developers there. So we have, astronaut, please crank the silly thing around, and some funny things like this. We have a very desperate developer here, hoping something is going right. I don't know what, I can't understand assembly. In this one, we have just a very standard master ignition route, and you can't see the file name, but it's from the Burn Baby Burn ignition routine, so neat stuff. One other one from back in time. This is the original Microsoft Word code, and it's released by Roy Levin. He didn't create it, but he was nice enough working at Microsoft to get this stuff released to the internet. And you can kind of get an idea of what it was like working for Microsoft on this project at the time. You've got an assembly note coded inline because we are gods. Catch bogus user input of stupidly large numbers. This is the 80s, so I had to Google, or I had to grep through the project. Found bogus is used 380 times in the project. Yeah. And I'm sorry for the profanity, but it was hilarious. This is inside of the original Microsoft code. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, another one that won't load. All right, so cool. So let's get a little more modern for a second. So there's this old standard back in the day, HTTP code 418, I'm a teapot, which is made by this guy, Larry Mastner. And it was made as an April Fool's joke. This is a guy who made a bunch of internet standards long, long ago. And it was the HTCP/CP, Hypertext Coffee Pot Control Protocol, which is funny, and a lot of people leave it in their projects as kind of an Easter egg. And occasionally, sometimes people find this file and think it's real. And so I'm just going to refresh. I'm sorry, guys. But anyway, there was an issue posted on Node.js where someone was like, hey, guys, I found this in your project, the 418 code. That shouldn't be there. And so it sparked a very long discussion. I can't show it. But anyway, eventually we've decided that it's OK to leave it in there. So guys, hooray, Node.js has an Easter egg hidden in it. Cool. Let's pray that the rest of this stuff works. All right, there's a few other ones. NPM has just like some ASCII stuff hidden in it. And just one more. This was given to me by Sean Wang today. I was talking about my Easter eggs, and Guy Fieri is actually in your code in Babel's repo. I'm really sorry that internet's not working, guys, but you have to trust me that that address has Guy Fieri in ASCII in Babel. And this is James Kyle. I did another Git blame and found out he's the guy who created flow.org, yarn package, Babel.js. So really neat. So anyway, this has been my talk about finding Easter eggs in different places in code. And I hope you guys had some fun with it. I had a lot of fun, researching this. And there's different industries that have their own Easter eggs, video games and animation. But I think it's cool that we get our own as developers. We have our own little secrets and our inside jokes. And the fact that these really big wigs of open source, the people that build the stuff we use every day, occasionally let their personality kind of seep into their projects. Personally, I find that to be pretty inspiring. So, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cole Turner, and today I'm going to be presenting Renderless Creating Performant Layouts. And just a little bit about myself. I'm a UI acquisition engineer at Netflix, so that means I get to work on the awesome sign-up flows and the landing pages that hopefully gets you to sign up for an account and become a member. Before that, I was at PayPal, where I worked in checkout, and just been in startups for a little bit over a decade. And why that matters is because when you're in the business of finance and streaming, you really want to make sure that you're meeting all of your customers' needs, whether they're a 4G user in the United States or a 2G user in India. We all don't have the same sort of souped up iPhones and awesome connections that we do here. And what I love about working at Netflix is we have dogs at work policy, so you can bring your dog to work, and I love that. Mine's in the middle, by the way. For me, it's just super awesome and kind of makes my productivity go through the roof. So I wanted to create this dog application because I love dogs so much. I just want to sit there and scroll through it all day. I like fluffy dogs, dogs with floppy ears, pointy ears, even ones with funny glasses. And so I built this application, and it uses what's called a masonry layout, which is super great because you can load elements of different sizes, and they fit well together. And it uses infinite scroll so that you can just keep going through the website to see more dogs. And it was awesome. I pushed it to production, and oh no, wait, this is actually what our users saw. Because the trouble with infinite scroll is after about 2 or 3 pages that the browser couldn't accommodate any more DOM elements or things held in memory. The users' browsers were crashing because they were using low-end Android devices and Chromebooks and things that weren't optimized to load 10,000 DOM elements. And what I learned through that is that not everybody has a souped-up MacBook Pro with 64 gigabytes of RAM like I do. And that's bad because if your website crashes, it's pretty much game over. Your users will find a better experience. And that's why I'm here today, because I want to say that React developers, we worry too much about avoiding re-renders. We're constantly optimizing for should component update and making sure that, why did you update, minimizing that. But I think rather than worrying so much about state changes, we need to worry a little bit more about how much we're rendering. So how much are we sending to our users? How much are they actually using? And what can their browser accommodate? What is accessible? Because if you're sending more to the user than they actually need, and they never get to that, what's the point? And if it crashes their browser, it's game over. So I put together this little game called Rendering Jeopardy. And the topic today is things that makes your layout slow. So I'm going to need your involvement and your help with this. Can anybody tell me for $50, by the way, there's no cash. For $50, what makes your layout slow? Just shout it out. Images. I heard images. I heard something, and it was actually DOM mutations, if it'll show up. There we go. DOM mutations are super expensive in React because when you render a lot of changes, it has to diff the virtual DOM, which means it's calculating all these properties that have changed. And it needs to synchronize that back to the browser so that it can flush those actual changes. And when it synchronizes the new DOM tree, it's inserting and pulling out nodes that have changed. So like if you change a tag or it thrashes, then it'll completely replace the element with a new one. All right, for $100, what makes your layout slow? Animation? Pretty close. We're looking for style calculations, which is kind of similar because animations come with style calculations. And it's expensive because the browser has to calculate the box model. Earlier, we heard a talk about get bounding client rect, which is a super neat API for getting how large an element is. And when the browser does that, it's actually painting the element. It's positioning it. It's figuring out where it belongs on the page. And here's where a lot of layout lag is observed by your users because when it does a style calculation and it's painting it, certain layouts can be a little bit slower than others. There's a really good article where it says, like, for example, CSS floats can be 14 milliseconds to paint, whereas Flexbox is only 3. And that's a, in the grand scheme of things, that's a huge performance savings. I'm gonna just skip ahead. The next one is layout thrashing. So layout thrashing is when it does all of these in tandem. So it's diffing the DOM, it's calculating the style, and it's performing all these mutations so quickly that the lag is perceivable, and it's on a massive scale. So imagine like 100 elements repainting at the same time. All right, now for our daily double. Can anybody tell me what makes your layout slow? Shout it out. Too much stuff, yes. Rendering all the things, yes. All right, thank you. Woo. I did not plant that. So rendering all the things is kind of slow because when you render everything, it has to do all of these DOM mutations. It has to do all of the style calculations, and it's thrashing everything at once. And I call this rendering jeopardy, not just because it's a game, but it also jeopardizes the performance of your app and the success of it moving forward. And when you're in the business of streaming, finance, or even putting blog posts up, you want your users to have that accessibility and not to crash. So going back to my application, I looked deep down into like how it was performing, and I found that for 500 dogs, we were actually rendering 2 DOM nodes per dog. And so we were rendering over 1,000 DOM nodes. And among those 500 dogs, at any given time, only about 24 were visible. So when you're only showing a subsect of your layout, why show things that they might never see? Why render it? Why incur the network cost of it? So that's why I'm here today, to talk about rendering less. And what that really means is create less elements. Render the viewport only the things that the user is seeing at any given time. Don't bother with the stuff that they're never going to reach. You can get a performance gain by getting rid of the stuff that they've already seen. And why the viewport matters most is as the sort of browser goes through, the viewport changes location in the page, that is what the user is seeing. And that's all you can actually gain that performance by rendering only that. So imagine those 500 dogs only rendering those 11. Minimizing the style calculations, because we're rendering less, we're not thrashing the layout as much. We're not calculating those styles, so it's a little bit of a performance gain there too. And by doing all this, we avoid the browser from reflowing and painting. If you can imagine 14 milliseconds or 15 times per second, that's a lot of time to save, and the perceivable lag will go down quickly. This is through a technique called virtualized rendering. It's been mentioned a couple times today, which is super awesome because I don't hear about it much on the job. And you can use utilities like React Window and React Virtualized to do that. Yesterday, there was a really great talk by Christina about Lighthouse, and she mentioned this really cool API called Intersection Observer, and I just learned about that for the first time yesterday. It's so cool because you can actually render using that API, only the stuff that's about to come into the viewport. Pretty cool. So here is what a viewport sort of virtual rendering looks like. As you can see, dogs are coming into the viewport, and as they do, they are rendered by the browser, and as they exit the viewport, my component is de-rendering them. So it's flushing the virtual DOM, and they're no longer being kept behind in the browser. And we do this with enough margin for scrolling so that it gives the browser enough time to paint those elements. So the user, when we do that technique, we actually can render 2,000 dogs with only 100 DOM nodes. That is like a massive amount of performance gain. And even though there's 200 or 120 dogs visible, we're still having that same scale of two nodes per dog, but this time it's only what's visible. It's fast, it's beautiful, and it's exactly as we designed it. Because we see the web as we designed it, we want our users to see that as well. Now, I do have one more thing, and I know the question that's on everybody's mind today. Cole, I know we can render twice as many dogs. And you're right, because we can render 500, 1,000 dogs. This is a bigger monitor. So we can render 1,000 dogs, or 500, sorry, using 1,000 DOM nodes, and you still have that same 2x scale. So you're at the mercy of the browser at this point. So you're kind of getting that full advantage of whatever resources are available. One more thing before I go, I just kind of want to recap. Render less things fewer times. Don't send everything to the browser that your user might not see. Give the browser exactly what they're viewing at any given time. Avoid layout thrashing, so keep an eye on like your browser developer tools or the profiler, which will tell you how many times you're thrashing the layout or calculating styles. And lastly, but most importantly, don't make my mistake. Test on low-end devices. Don't wait for it to get to production. If you're looking for a really great resource for this, check out browserstack.com, and that will let you emulate your website on any device. Thanks so much for listening. If you're interested in more, I put together a couple resources that can guide you further through this. Definitely check out CSS triggers to see what animations or things you're doing that's causing your users to lag or crash. And Google put together this really great article about avoiding large, complex layouts and layout thrashing. Lastly, if you want to check out more pictures of dogs, follow me on Twitter. Thank you.
My name is Jason Clark. I'll give you a little bit of information about me. Yes, that's Share Bear. That is a real Care Bear. Look it up. 5 seconds of me, a little more than 5 seconds. I am the lead front-end engineer at Patient Ping. See the shirt. I am Rice Boiler on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Rice Boiler on GitHub. Basically, anywhere on the internet you find Rice Boiler, that's me. I am a sob enthusiast, which means I have lots of sob stories. Thank you. I've done lots of freelancing, still do a lot of freelancing. That's where I play with a lot of stuff, so it's a lot of fun. Husband of one, dad of three, son of two sets of parents, and a brother to 10 siblings between two families. I'm adopted, and earlier this year I found my biological family and found that I had 9 full siblings, so that was a pretty cool story. So that's me. So I have a question for you. How many of you build components? I hope everybody's raising your hand in here. How many of you have a component library that you build or work with? Okay, good. That's a lot of you. For those of you who don't, that's what this talk is about, and this is for you because I think I'm going to make your life a whole lot easier. Components are ubiquitous. We had a great talk yesterday about components. As children, we learned to play with components. We had Legos. We had building blocks. We had, who knows what that is? Connects. Very good. Who's the first person that said that? Who wants to claim it? You, sir, get a t-shirt. See me after the talk. Woohoo! We still use components, right? As adults, we still play with them. Obviously, we're all here for React. There's this Vue thing that some of you may have heard of. There's the evil red A. I didn't really say that. And then there's this thing. Who knows what that is? Who wants the shirt for that one? No, you don't get to. If you want a shirt, come see me. I think I have enough. So we still play with these components. The key is that you should share your components. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is bit. How many of you have heard of bit? Wow, that's kind of scary. Well, then they really love me. So bit actually sent me a bunch of stickers and t-shirts because they want me to tell you guys about them. So what is bit? Bit is a cloud-based component repository. That sounds really fancy. Basically, it's GitHub or Bitbucket, but it's made specifically for components. So you can make these components, put them in the cloud, share them out. They provide a searchable registry of components so that you can actually look and see if somebody else has built what you want. How many times have you been working on a project and you're like, man, it'd be so nice if I didn't actually have to build this component myself and somebody else did it? Hopefully you're thinking that way. You can find them on Bit's site, which is really cool. And it can actually perform some component-based tasks like CI. It can do your unit testing for you. It can do integration testing. It can do bundling for you. And so it's really cool. We've been using it at Patient Ping for about 4 months now. It's completely changed how we do things because now we look at components that we build across our different applications and say, could this be a share bear? Yes, that's the name of our shared component library. That's my fault. I take the full responsibility for that. Could this be a share bear component? And it changes how we think about them. So it's really cool. So I'm going to show you how this works. And you know, there's nothing quite like live demos, right? So you know something is going to go wrong here. And that's the first thing that went wrong. Helps if you minimize the browser that you're trying to use. All right, so this is Bit's website. If you want to get started, you click on the big orange Get Started button. And I realize this probably needs to be a bit bigger. How's that? That's a bit bigger. Thank you. I don't even mean to have a ton of them, and I just do it by accident. I've already registered, so I'm not going to do this, but it's pretty simple. You just go through, you can either create an account here or just connect with GitHub. It'll do OAuth through GitHub. Pretty much everybody on earth that's a developer now has a GitHub account, right? If you don't have a GitHub account, what's wrong with you? So just connect through GitHub. It's a lot easier that way. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. I've got a separate one for my personal stuff. And so I have no component share. Imagine that. And I have a couple of scopes. Let me explain scopes really fast. Scopes are basically ways to containerize, if you will, your components. It's a way to make sure that you can put them all together and make it easier to find. So I am the director of web innovation for a car stereo competition group called Mecca, and that's what that one's for. I don't have anything in there either. That's where all of this is eventually going into. But I made one for React Boston, because that just makes sense. So I'm going to open up my IDE, and I know that's way too small. Mo better? Good. Here's the worst component you've ever seen. It's like the hello world, right? So I want to make it where anybody can have this component and use it because it's so awesome. So what am I going to do? Well, I need to get hooked up to Bit. And in order to do that, I'm going to switch over to my terminal, and I first need to get logged in. So I need to create a Bit interface. And so I do that with bit init. Thank you. And it says successfully initialized an empty bit scope. Now, let me show you what this actually does in the code. So this is a create React app, boilerplate, obviously nothing really big to it. But here are a couple of files that it adds. It adds a bit.json file. This is kind of how they track things. It does create a .bit file, or a folder. I don't recommend going in there. It does really scary things and you'll have nightmares. And there's another file you'll see in a minute that it creates called a .bitmap that's used. All right, so I've created that. I need to make sure I'm logged in. Excuse me. Well, I'm not going to be logged in then. All right, I need to add this component. So this component is called welcome banner. It's in a folder called welcome-banner. And so I'm just going to do bit add source/welcome-banner. This is not going well, right? Maybe we're on the wrong wrong version of nude? Okay, let's try this again. Please? Oh, you got to be kidding me. All right, so here's the other thing you can do. When you go into your scope, it actually does tell you how you can get started. So I'm going to try this, and let's see if for some reason my global bit bin got removed. So pardon me while I do an npm install. Anybody see the Patriot score? Huh?
3-zip Patriots, right?
Oh, 3-zip Patriots? That's better than I was expecting, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay, now it's installed. Cross your fingers for me, please. Bit login. Hey, that looks better. Woohoo! It's all because of you. All right, so we're going to try this again. So source, welcome, dash banner. All right, so it added those files. They aren't up on the cloud yet, for obvious reasons. I haven't done anything to push them out there. If I do a bit status now, then it tells me that it's got some that are ready to tag. So then I can do a bit tag, and in this case, I can just do all. And what that does is anything that's changed, it'll automatically bump the patch version number for you, so that now you can see I was at 000, now I'm at 001, and so they're tagged. They're still not out there, all right? So in order to get these out onto my scope where I need them to be, I have to do bit export, and I have to remember what the syntax is for this because I have an alias set up for work. Let's see here. It should be. Cross your fingers again. Ah, that's good. It says it's exporting, so. Tell me that's not exactly what that says right there. Let's try this again. All right. It does walk you through this. So in this case, yep, not a slash. It's a dot. I was already logged in, but I was logged in under the wrong account. Normally, it's much easier than this when you're not bouncing between stuff. All right, now let's try this again. Oop, no, good. All right, so. Sweet. All right, so now if I do a bit list, we should see I have one component out there. The local version is 001, the used version is 001. And if I refresh this page, you should hopefully see amazing things. Oops, helps if I go to the right one. All right, so it's not so amazing. But I have a component out here. And say that I want to use it in my project. I want to replace the one that I've got out there. Well, I've got this handy dandy little thing here that after I set the npm, the registry right here using this command, it tells you what to do. Then I can do an npm install of this component and I can use it anywhere and everywhere. And I can send it to my friends and say, hey, check out this cool component I made. This cost me nothing. This is really easy to do. How many of you have packaged up an npm package and published it? How easy is it? Was it this easy? Really? I'm doing it wrong. I think this is pretty darn easy. Yes, it does work with Yarn as well. So if you prefer Yarn, you can certainly do that. You can add descriptions. So I'm going to switch windows because I'm really feeling daring. Oops, I'm going to switch to the wrong window. So I'm going to show you quickly what our, not that one, that one. Let me show you what our ShareBear repository, see I told you it's called ShareBear. There it is. And so we have components out here, and we have some rules around putting these components in. There has to be proper documentation in place. So we document how to use it, what the props are. We will sometimes have an example of what it looks like. To give you an example of that, you can actually do this in Bit. They give you in the documentation how to do it. 13 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. So for instance, if I wanted to do something like Netflix's title items, I can look that up. That's somebody else's repo. And so here's an example in the browser of how they're doing it and how it works. So, as cool as Storybook is, and I love Storybook to death, we use it a lot. It's also really cool to where if you don't want to have somebody load up Storybook, they can just come here and look at how it's rendered out. So it's pretty cool. I'm a big fan of Bit. So, did not mean to click on the actual logo. Let's go back full screen. Let's go back full screen. Yeah, good enough. All right, so these are the steps that I had to go through to get started. You install globally the Bit bin package. That's basically their CLI. You CD into your project directory. You do an init, a login. You add the folder and component. And it doesn't just have to be a component at a time. You can say, I want every component in there, and you can bit all the things if you want to. Tag them all at the same time. You can export them all and have them there immediately. If you need to go back and edit them, you can edit them and push out a new version. If you want to branch to a different create a completely different version, say this is going to break backwards compatibility, you can use Symver and just say, all right, I want this to be version 1.2 or 2.3 or whatever. So you have total control over that. A couple of important commands, bit init. The reset is important. There are times, they're still working on this. And this is a group of developers in Israel, I believe. They're building this tool out. They've been working on it pretty hard for about 2 years, but they've still got some growth to do. I mean, nothing's perfect, right? So sometimes your folder will blow up. You have to run bit init reset to get it back. Bit import, so if you have a component you've already exported out and you pull it back in, you can do it through bit import. Bit add, and then you do your folder and the component, or you can do a wildcard. I don't believe it does anything more than just a simple wildcard. Bit tag, so you can tag individual components, or you can tag them all and bump your version number. And then you need to export to your scope, and then you can do a bit list to tell you what your bit components are. And that's it. I wanted to thank Bit for sending this swag. So if you want a t-shirt, come talk to me. Thank React Boston, because it's a great place to talk. And I was supposed to be here and talk last year and ended up in the emergency room. So I had a good excuse, but I'm glad to have actually done it this time. And then my incredible employer, Patient Ping, if you're looking for a job, we are hiring, and we love React. Thanks.